In the still, pale hours of morning, before the footfalls of the household begin echoing against wood and stone, the kitchen awakens alone. There is a hush that settles in the room, a quiet expectancy. The hearth, dark and cold, sits like a slumbering heart in the center of it all. It is here that the morning begins, not with speech, not with movement, but with fire. A single servant rises before the rest, her shoes silent on the stone floor. She does not rush, for nothing about this ritual is hurried. She gathers the kindling, dry, thin branches stacked carefully beside the hearth the night before. Her hands know the motions well, the rhythm of laying wood, crumpling paper, striking flint. The first flame is small and flickering. It catches against the twigs and curls upward, warm orange against the lingering night's cold. Slowly, the fire begins to grow, filling the room with the soft crackle of burning wood and the gentle dance of light across pewter and crockery. Over the fire hangs the kettle, copper, burnished, darkened with age. It is heavy with water drawn from the pump, its belly reflecting the fire's glow like a second sun. The metal pops and groans gently as the heat works its way in. This moment, kettle over flame, warmth pressing against early chill, is one that would have happened in thousands of middle-class homes across Victorian England. Before the newspaper was delivered, before the clatter of footsteps on cobblestones, there was the kettle. Its slow boil was the heartbeat of the home. The kitchen itself is modest, its walls are not grand or ornate, but washed in a plain, durable plaster. On shelves, stacked in calm order, are ceramic bowls, glass jars filled with barley or tea, and pewter plates. A few sprigs of dried herbs, rosemary, lavender, hang from nails, their scent faint in the air. There is a serenity in this domestic space, one born not of luxury but of function. Everything has its place. The table is scrubbed, marked with age. The chairs are slightly mismatched but sturdy. Light filters in through small paned windows, catching on the dust in the air. The servant, perhaps a young maid of 14 or 15, moves with quiet familiarity. She sets the table for the cook who will arrive shortly. She lays out a small cutting board, a lump of yesterday's bread, a jar of jam. The kettle begins to hum, its lid rattling gently. Outside, the world is still gray with sleep. But here in the kitchen, warmth has returned. This is the start of every day, soft, methodical, comforting, a ritual not just of utility but of care. For in tending the fire, in boiling the kettle, in laying the table, there is a kind of quiet affection extended to the household. For the Victorian middle class, the kitchen was not always visible to guests or visitors. It was a place of labor, of order. But it was also a place where life began each morning, where heat and nourishment were born. To understand the rhythms of a Victorian home is to understand the sacred stillness of its earliest hour, the whisper of fire catching tinder, the murmur of water coming to boil, and the hush of a kitchen gently waking. There's a certain artistry in making use of what's left behind. In the Victorian middle-class home, economy was a virtue and nothing edible was ever truly discarded. Even the crusts of bread, the bones stripped of their meat, the softening vegetables, all had their place in the cycle of the kitchen. Waste was not merely frowned upon, it was a sign of disorder, even moral failing. So from these remnants, meals were made anew. In the corner of the kitchen, the heavy black pot simmers. It is rarely empty for long. Into it go bones from yesterday's roast, potato peels, onion skins, perhaps a bruised tomato or sprigs of fading parsley. The water takes on the memory of these ingredients, turning rich and savory over hours. The cook, more artist than mere laborer, watches the pot with practiced eyes. She knows when to stir, when to wait. Her senses are tuned to the slow unfolding of flavor, the aroma deepening, the liquid thickening. This is a daily ritual, not hurried, not loud. A slow alchemy that transforms scraps into sustenance. The table beside the hearth becomes a place of preparation. Leftover potatoes are mashed and reformed into cakes. Bits of bacon are sliced finely to stretch through multiple meals. Cold boiled carrots are chopped for relishes. Even the smallest portion can be folded into tomorrow's dish. Pickling is another art, often done quietly in the afternoon light. Jars of onions, cucumbers, beetroot, all sealed and placed carefully on the pantry shelf. In this way, the abundance of summer is preserved for winter and the cycle of use continues, nothing is wasted. The maid, having cleaned the breakfast dishes, now helps the cook fold cloths over cold meats, tidy the pantry, and arrange items to be reused. There is little conversation, just the soft clink of crockery, the rustle of fabric. These are the sounds of quiet diligence. In some homes, a small book lies open on the shelf near the table, a handwritten recipe collection passed down through generations. It contains instructions not only for dishes but for reviving bread, for using turnip peelings, for thickening soup with flour paste. It is a kind of domestic scripture. And so the kitchen continues its rhythm, not just preparing food, but honoring it. Each meal is not an isolated event but a continuation of the last. Today's stew carries yesterday's roast, which held the bread from 2 days before. It is a quiet continuum, unspoken but deeply felt. There is dignity in this cycle, though humble. It speaks of care, of an attentiveness that refuses to let anything go to waste. It is not dramatic, but it is essential, and in this quiet economy, there is a kind of grace. In a quiet Victorian kitchen, the work never truly ends, it only shifts. After the fire is lit and the meal is made, after the breakfast dishes are cleared and the tea is poured, there comes a different kind of work, slower, softer, yet no less important. This is the time for cleaning, not the frantic scrubbing of an emergency or the clangor of a spring overhaul, but the daily rhythm of care. Calm, repetitive gestures meant to preserve the order of the home. The broom is brought out, its bristles darkened with age but still strong. It does not sweep quickly, it is drawn in long, deliberate strokes across the flagstone floor. Dust and crumbs, flour and ash are coaxed toward the corners and quietly gathered into the hearth's low embers. There is no need for harsh chemicals here. The air is scented faintly with vinegar, beeswax polish, and soap made from tallow and ash. These homemade solutions are kept in humble stoneware jugs beneath the sink, their usefulness far exceeding their cost. A maid may begin at the fireplace and work outward, wiping soot from the kettle's belly, polishing the brass trivets that rest on the hearth, and brushing down the fire irons. Each item touched with care, restored to its place not just for function, but for pride. Washing cloths are dipped into warm water and wrung carefully. Surfaces are wiped, the scrubbed pine table, the ledges of windows, the lip of the flour bin. The motion is not rushed, it is almost meditative, the sound of damp fabric whispering across wood. Even the most minor items are tended to. Copper spoons burnished to a dull glow, jars aligned just so, tea tins dusted, their labels straightened. The pantry is checked, not for abundance but for neatness. Every sack is tied, every lid is closed. Cleaning, in the Victorian kitchen, was not just hygiene. It was a demonstration of order, discipline, and care, a reflection of the home's moral standing. Dirt was seen not merely as inconvenience, but as a kind of disorder in the soul of the household. And yet, this was not punishment or severity. It was quiet duty, performed often in solitude. The sounds are subdued, the occasional creak of floorboards, the soft splash of water, the muted clink of crockery. The house, during this hour, exhales. In homes with multiple servants, tasks might be shared, one tending to the range, another to the washing up, a third polishing cutlery. But in smaller middle-class houses, there may be only one maid, and she does it all, moving from room to room in a kind of humble choreography. When the cleaning is done, the room feels lighter. Not grand, not changed, simply right, the hearth is once again at rest. The counters are dry, the windows are clear. And for a while, the kitchen holds its breath. This daily care was what kept the Victorian home humming. Not grand gestures, not expensive items, but the steady touch of hands that polished and folded, brushed and swept. In this there was quiet dignity, the invisible labor that made everything else possible. As the long shadows stretch across the tiled floor, the pace of the kitchen slows once more. The rush of midday, the scrape of pans, and the hiss of boiling pots all begin to fade into the hush of evening. And here, another ritual begins, quieter, gentler, the assembling of the tea tray. Upon the table, a teapot rests like a small crown jewel, porcelain, delicately glazed, perhaps chipped at the rim. Mismatched cups sit in pairs, each with its own soft memory of mornings and gatherings past. A covered dish holds strawberry preserve, sweet and thick, while a plate of shortbread gives off the faint scent of butter and flour. No grand ceremony follows. This is not tea for guests or for show, but tea for rest, a household's small sigh at the end of the day. And so it is laid out slowly, with care and a kind of quiet reverence. In the front parlor, the scene awaits quietly. A single armchair drawn close to the hearth, its fabric faded from years of sun. The fire is no longer roaring, just glowing, a gentle warmth for weary feet and thoughts. The tray is placed beside it, and the room absorbs its presence like a familiar companion. The sound of a spoon against porcelain, the hush of tea being poured, all echo faintly against the quiet. This is where reflection begins, not in loud words or weighty conclusions, but in the soft comfort of routine. A cup of tea, warm against the palms, invites the mind to wander gently through the day's memories and then let them rest. The day draws to a close, and the kitchen begins to exhale. The last few dishes are gently washed and set to dry. The hearth, once so full of movement and heat, now glows faintly, the embers dimming into silence. A cloth is folded and hung, a floor swept once more for good measure. These are not chores for the sake of duty alone, but gestures of care. The kitchen must sleep, too, and the act of tidying becomes a kind of lullaby. Even the smallest clatter of a spoon against a bowl now sounds like an echo in a cathedral, slow, deliberate, and sacred. The mistress of the house, perhaps a mother, perhaps alone in thought, takes her tea quietly. She does not speak, her posture is composed, her face thoughtful. The room around her holds its breath. Outside, the day fades gently, the garden lost to shadow and moth-wing flutters. Inside, the quiet grows, not heavy, but still like parchment waiting for ink. For this moment, time is held, not rushed, not wasted, just held. And with each sip of warm tea, there is a kind of gratitude that doesn't need words. The cups are nearly empty now. A spoon rests idly against porcelain. The jam has been mostly taken, the biscuits are gone, and the teapot is a little lighter in the hand. These are the gentle marks of rest taken well. Nothing grand has happened, and yet everything has, for this is how peace is made, not with pronouncements, but with small rituals repeated gently over time. The kitchen and parlor, once full of tasks and lists, now hold only the sound of the clock ticking softly and the hush that follows tea. A sacred silence earned. Evening does not descend all at once in the Victorian kitchen. It comes gently, slowly dimming the edges of vision, quieting the corners of sound, folding the day inward like a letter nearly complete. There is no sudden darkness here, no abrupt farewell to labor. Rather, there is a gradual winding down, a tapering of motion, a hush that settles in like an old friend. The fire that was once the center of heat and urgency has now grown low. Embers give off their last light, not protesting, but yielding. They crackle only occasionally, as if murmuring to themselves in the softest of tones. A broom leans against the wall, used not long ago to sweep away flour, ash, and fallen threads of rosemary. Now it rests, just as the room itself seems to. The scent in the air has shifted, where once there was steam, boiling oats, a hint of vinegar or roast. Now there is only the gentle perfume of drying herbs and spent wood smoke. The perfume of a kitchen that has, for the moment, done all it must do. In the hearth, a few glowing coals remain. They pulse like memories, fading but still warm. No longer hot enough to boil or bake, but warm enough to comfort. Above them, soot-darkened pots hang motionless. Once tools of motion, now quiet sentinels, watching the ending hour. This hearth, this very place, is not just a feature of brick and flame. It is the very heart of the kitchen, and its stillness now blesses the end of day. Elsewhere, there is motion, but only the kind that finishes, that finalizes. The maid, who worked through morning and noon, moves gently. Not because she is tired, but because she understands the tone of this hour. She folds cloths, linens that had seen spills, now clean again. She stacks plates, not loudly, but in pairs and rhythms that have become ritual. There is no need for conversation now. The quiet is its own company. She lifts the last cloth from the line and presses it gently into its folded twin. Not a crease is missed, everything, even the smallest cloth, has its place. Her sleeves are rolled just once, her shoes make no sound on the tile. She does not need to be told what must be done. This hour of closure is one she knows by heart, and in her silence there is pride. Not loud or boastful, but a quiet satisfaction. That the day was useful and now it is over. On the table lies a small, leather-bound book. Not of fiction, but of household notes. Open to a page half filled in neat ink, it lists the morrow's needs. Soak oats for morning, to eggs to be kept aside. Apples nearly soft, a use for tart, beside it a pencil nub and a folded handkerchief rest. As though even in rest the household still breathes softly forward. The ledger's script is careful, graceful. Not elegant in the ornamental sense, but steady, humble, deliberate. These are the thoughts of someone who understands a house is not just lived in, it is tended. Even the smallest entry, polished spoons, carries with it not duty, but care. The spectacles placed nearby suggest reflection, perhaps from the mistress herself. She, too, knows the rhythm. That after fire and food, and folding and sweeping, there must come the pause. A stillness that is not empty, but full of presence. Outside the window, the last of the evening colors melt across the glass. The world beyond turns soft and blurred. Cobblestones no longer glint, they mute, garden hedges lose their shape. The cart that passes makes no more sound than a whisper. And in the darkening air, moths have begun their slow, fluttering dances. From inside, the window is a painting, a frame for fading light. A watercolor of shadows and silhouettes. A single sprig of dried lavender dangles above, turning slowly in the invisible breeze. The room inside is still lit by one low lamp, its golden light warmer than day's sun. Inside and outside, two different realms, but now equally hushed. It is only now that we truly understand the shape of the day, not just in its tasks and sounds, but in its closing. And this, too, is a ritual to darken the hearth, to sweep the crumbs, to write the note, to lower the light, to take a final look and to be satisfied. The kitchen, now viewed whole, is quiet perfection. Nothing moves, nothing smokes, nothing clatters or simmers or boils. But everything speaks, the shelves full and tidy. The towels clean and folded, the plates cooled and stacked. The spoon resting in a bowl by the window. Even the air itself has shape, soft-edged and amber. The final lamp is lowered. The latch clicks gently. And the room, so filled with the labor of the living, is finally allowed to sleep. And here, at the close of day, we see that care is not just for the morning. It is not just for the heat or the noise or the need. Care lives here, in the silence, in the finished work, in the light that fades with reverence, and in the humble kitchen now at peace.